So back in 2019, I was invited to be a user experience designer on a website project. And the challenge for this project was quite interesting for me. And when I had the brief, or when I got the brief from the client, essentially what the client wanted was how best can this client communicate a story of farmers who grow coffee without making their stories feel non-government organization like content approach. If you don't know what that means, there's this connotation that non-government organizations or NGOs always they use that approach of content that drives donations, and the tactics are quite really apparent. Like they make you feel that you need to help these people in the images. So the client didn't want that, but they wanted something that can tell stories of of farmers, but not in that like needy way. So it was an interesting challenge, and I accepted to take it on. We were a team of about three. The photographer who is leading video and photography, my friend Chris Rutanga, and then the copywriter, my friend still Ida. So we were really interested, and I think I remember our first interaction. We were just like brainstorming on how we're gonna take on this challenge and come up with something the client would love. And by the way, you guys know how much I love coffee, so when this came in, I think that was around 2019, late 2019. We were hearing rumors of the the virus in other countries. So right here in Uganda, it wasn't really something that we were worried about. So we hit the road to go do some research, and we agreed on a methodology here, and we wanted to do some contextual inquiry or contextual research. And I think this gave us an opportunity to live a day in the life of the coffee farmer. And I mean, like, it was a bumpy road, visiting plantation after plantation, but like all was worth it. But the entire idea was to really now understand how they live their lives. And we had a voice recorder just to capture all the sound bites. Every other evening we return home and try to really analyze the content. I remember there was this amazing session where I think a friend of mine asked an interesting question, which I would never thought about. And that question, I don't want to spoil it for you, but essentially what he wanted to understand whether these farmers who grow coffee themselves, they consume coffee. It was quite a discovery for me, like realizing that we all get mixed up in all these like machinery that make coffee, but even there was some conventional ways of making coffee, and I felt like I should try this. That's how I bought this mortar. So I started like actually grinding my own beans in this. So this is it's called HNU, but like you think about it as something that you use to grind. So I started like mimicking what the farmer told us how they make their cups of coffee. But yeah, we were excited with the insight we captured. Like we also did slide in some interviews because we didn't have all the time we needed to. I mean, like tag along throughout their day, like say when they leave home or before they leave home. So we asked questions about their family, how do they take kids to school, what kind of other things they're interested in, and we got a lot of insight. So after like the contextual inquiry, we hit the road and back to Kampala. So the next thing there was to now figure out ways of like interpreting and synthesizing with these insights. So me and Chris, we did a design sprint, which was I think a day's design sprint. And it was quite like really fun. Like I think I did this at home, like at my old apartment. And it was quite amazing that we did the crazy eights where we sketched out all like the visuals on how to tell these stories. And there was this amazing idea Chris came up with, and I want you guys to listen to this idea, and I will show you how we implemented this idea progressively throughout the design process.
So this is where maybe like the radius, the site could be, and then you have one of the farmer groups thing. Let's say that beeps shows a hotspot of where the jungles of farmers are in this location.
Right.
So when you hover, let's say mouse or if you tap on it using your finger, like it just does like a bounding box and highlights and says this farmer group is, let's say, called farmer group 1. Farmer group 1 has 12 farmers as this, this, this.
So essentially, Chris's idea was to feature a map on the website, and when someone is scrolling, they can have a place on the map and they get feedback on what group is it and how many farmers are in this group and how many hectares of land do they have, how many tons of coffee do they produce, right? So it was a sweet idea and we were really excited to implement. So I'm gonna walk you through some of the design decisions we made along the way, step by step, all the way to the developer handoff and how we did that. On any product design project, I always want to worry about the brand first. So what I did here is to reach out to the client to ask for any brand assets they had. We only had the logo here and I had to figure out how to make this logo work. And I'll give you a quick story that, like, in the first place, I really didn't like this logo. So I took on the effort to pitch the client to change the logo. But like we settled on the ground that the client didn't want to change the logo, so we had to figure out how to make this logo work. So the first thing I did was to, try to come up with ways of like testing the logo, whether it would work on black and white. So this was me just experimenting that dimension. And what I also did was to now separate like the logo, look up and have like a logo, type, and then see whether that could maybe be handy in the process. So the next thing to worry about, like when it comes to brand, assets, like it was color. Color, we were limited to the colors in the logo. And honestly, like the colors were boring. Like if you have the logo and then everything on the website looks like the logo, it's not like a good situation. So what I did, I made the green the primary and then the red the base color. And I'm gonna show you how this is really, really important, like in expounding like a brand color palette. So you can see we had like a lot of exploration, and I think I leveraged like Adobe Color, like that, if you know that too. So I had like all different harmonies and trying to see whether this can work well with the base color. So in between, one of my friends, Chris, liked the split complementary, and we tried to really work with this. So we were testing the color to see whether the client would fall in love with this color palette. So I worked on a quick section. This section, like we named it Our Story, and we gave it like just like dummy copy. And then we pitched this color palette to the client, and for some reason the client didn't like the palette, so we had to go back to square one. So square one meaning we had to go back and start exploring different like color palettes. So I knew what I had to do after getting this feedback from the client, because I feel like on that call the client didn't feel like we respected the brand colors. So I knew that if we're gonna work something out, it has to be something within the color palette, within the two palettes. So essentially, like any other like accent colors has to really, really be either subtle, like you shouldn't overdo it. So I think the next thing here, I paused the exploration of color and I put together all these other, verbal cues that are gonna help us really move and progress throughout, like coming up with different like visuals. So the payoff line here was filled with love from Uganda, and then the mission statement and the domain, like the product and service, which is coffee and the farmers. Like at the center of the website, it was coffee and the farmers. The voice and tone, and these are things I'm coming up with the copywriter. And remember, like that contextual inquiry we did, like these are insights we managed to capture when we're doing the inquiry. So I'm just gonna walk you through my thought process when I'm coming up with wireframes. And as you can see, like in the wireframes, I always like keep it focused on the hero section, like anything above the fold. So that means the main navigation and the hero section. And the reason for this always, for me, I think it's a theory, right? But I think like the hero section is the first impression. Like everyone, when you visit the website, the hero section shapes the idea of what you're gonna see when you scroll or even go to different tabs throughout the website. So you have to nail the hero section because it's gonna shape the design language. So that is my thought process why I always choose to go with the hero section first. And it's quite interesting. Remember the crazy 8? So this is where you start now experimenting different dimensions of all those crazy eights you guys built during the design sprint. So you can see that we worked on some like main navigation, like iterations, and started like even involving text in it. And there's this crazy idea we had of like having a notification like bell somewhere on the main navigation. And I think the original idea was every time you visit the website and there's a red flag or a red signal, then you know that there is a new story on the website. Yeah, so of course after the low fidelity, the next thing you need to work on is like a bit of high fidelity to start pitching the idea. So that's what I did, and you will see that I used one image so that there is always like that even ground for all sections. Because when you start using different images, one image could be better than the other and it could influence the decision in a way. So you can limit that bias by having one image throughout, one copy throughout, one call to action throughout. So that's what I did here. Like I had like different iterations of like say the main navigation, like as you can see, like now transitioning from wireframes all the way to the high fidelity, and still concentrating and focusing on the hero section and the navigation, like going with that thought process I gave you. So I started inviting like my colleagues to give feedback. As you can see, Chris was really so involved in that project. So he liked this, and I remember like his rationale for this was when you think about it, like having a full image gives that room for telling a better story. And yeah, I like the rationale for that. There was this idea also Chris liked of having like a full image on the far right, and then like some text on the far left. So I also actually like this idea, and I'll show you how we progressed with this idea. So as you can see, my approach here, I don't design and finish and then invite my colleagues to give me feedback when the design is done. What I do, I always involve them in the design process. So in between, I always need instant feedback. So Chris here like gave me confidence for these two ideas. So idea one and then idea two, and I started like narrowing down to these two ideas and using that rationale of keeping it on the hero section and the main navigation. Think about the full image of like hero section as the version one. So I pitched this version to the client after putting together like a full mock-up of the entire website or homepage. And the client said no, like they didn't like it as I mentioned. So now version 2 was really focused on like the idea of having like an image on the far right and then text on the far left. And we're exploring this, and I think the client fell in love with this. So this version 2 really became something like, I would say like a level ground for us to experiment different ideas after getting that yes from the client. I want to talk about like how this neon green now comes by. So going back to our design page here, brand design page here, you will see when I was exploring like different like color harmonies, like I came across this neon green I think in the triad harmony, and I mean like that like hit like a light bulb went off, and I was like, okay, let's use this because it works well with the red. So coming back to this, you will see that then we started leveraging this. We had even like it embedded in gradients to kind of like really activate that green, because the green seemed so boring, like honestly. So you will see that this was version 2, and we started like experimenting with the ideas. And remember like Chris's idea of having a map. So this is how it came by. And then we started experimenting, and I just want to show you like some of the decisions I make in between. So when I was designing this, I figured like we could have like maybe some iconography. So I worked on some icons in Illustrator. As you can see, like I worked on that sack of beans, and then I started experimenting with having like a flowery branch of like beans, and I think that became like the center of every other part of this the website. And there's this farmer icon that I really liked, and we ended up using it somewhere. And then these tools, I also like these tools. So you see that flowery thing I talked about, like so it cuts across all the sections of the website, and then you have like the farmer icon, that signature. And honestly, like that's the one thing that the client loved about the entire website. Actually, those are the two things that the client loved about the website. It was that like beans, like the flower beans, and then the beans themselves like going like different like sections in the website, and then the farmer icon. Like it was really a simple website, I would say, but like when you look at the simplicity of a website, it doesn't mean that like the work that goes in it, it's just like a day's work. As you can see, like we did contextual, inquiries, and we had all these meetings like on and after. So after going through different iterations of the design, now the client really was happy with one direction. The next thing I was now to think about implementation. So the original idea we had with the team was to use Webflow to implement. So essentially what was going to happen, I was going to be the designer and the developer on the project. But then for some reason in between we hit a hurdle where the client wanted to work with a different, developer. And we were not really happy with this because the developer didn't have background or experience with Webflow, and they wanted to implement the site in WordPress. The idea of implementing the website in WordPress wasn't something we were settling with. So we tried our best to convince the client to give us the honor of implementing our vision in Webflow. But the client had a work relation, or they had worked on some projects in the past with the developer who was experienced with WordPress. But honestly, we all knew, my experience with WordPress, I knew that the interactions I had in mind or the vision we had with the team together wasn't gonna be actualized in WordPress. At the end of every project, there are so many challenges you come across, and these challenges are ways of you learning not to do the same mistakes on any other project. So I want to share with you some of like the learnings or the challenges I experienced and how I learned from them. So challenge number one. So challenge number one has to do with the copy, right? So on every project I've been part of, I always like try to put the power of a UX writer in the hands of a copywriter. And it's quite challenging. Like when you think about it, like copywriting is a tool that creates like quantity, like it creates all this amazing copy. Then now the task is on you to try figure out how to make this copy work on the website. So the first solution I came up with was to put together like a page in Figma so that the copywriter could take their Word documents and try insert the copy into this thing where I can now make it really work or optimized for the website. Honestly, this didn't work because it felt like I was just confusing the copywriter. But then I think what I realized or what I discovered was to try one. I think there are two things I learned from this. One, you always need to do the UX writing. When the copy comes in the Word document, you need to optimize it yourself. So every user experience designer out there needs to have like experience in UX writing or content design in that case. So the other thing I learned is to invite them to drop comments directly on the design. Say you bring the paragraph from like their Word document and have it like say in the design, maybe in one section. So you invite them on that specific section to say, okay, could you reward this to, like a 3-line paragraph or something like that. So I think that was handy, and I realized like it works. So I started like leveraging it. The other thing I learned from this project is to always ask the question of like the implementation stack. You need to know how the website is gonna be implemented before even you start designing. Because in this case, if I knew that it's gonna be implemented in WordPress, like I would already be thinking about like different ways of designing something that is gonna really work with WordPress. Or even in that case, I would really try to convince the client right before the project kicks off to take on the development, and I would have saved the vision there. But still, what the implementer did was a good job, and as I mentioned, like there's a link for you guys to go check it out in the description. All right, thank you guys for watching, and if you guys are interested in this kind of content, because on the channel we've been focusing more on brand design, case studies, but if you guys want to see more of my product design life, I can start really packaging that for you. But yeah, that's it. Let me know in the comment section if this is something that will interest you. But other than that, I'll catch you in the next one. And don't forget to subscribe if you're new. You guys know how much I love coffee, and you can buy me a cup of coffee if that doesn't add. There's a link in the description. I'll catch you in the next one. Hey Chris.
Hey.
How are you, man?
Good, man. How are you?
Good.
So yeah, the car is packed and we're heading back into the villages for the second day. We decided to do something really interesting. The guys here grew a lot of coffee, but they don't drink the coffee. So lots of coffee that comes from here, Masaka, it's Robusta coffee, and all they do is produce the coffee, but they don't grind it, they don't drink it, they don't enjoy what they grow. So we have decided that we want to go to the supermarket, buy the actual product, the coffee, and then most of them have their first experience with the coffee. So I think this is going to give us an opportunity to get some really, really nice images of people trying coffee out for the first time. And then tomorrow it's a very, very bit surprising, and we'll tell you tomorrow. But for today, let's hit the supermarket, get some coffee, and we'll see you around.
Cool. All right. Yeah. I'm behind the camera.